Aloha and welcome to Goddess Unleashed. This is Diane Vick, and on today's episode of Courage and Compassion, I brought someone. Her name is Sandra Rolus. I hope I pronounced it correctly. And, and I actually found her on YouTube in the middle of this pandemic and came across her beautiful meditations using the practice of Ho'oponopono. And she's a timeline therapist and an absolutely beautiful person outside and inside. So I'll let her introduce herself and then I'll talk a little bit more. Go ahead, Sandra.
Thank you for having me on the show. So I'm a Sedona-based timeline trauma release facilitator and teacher trainer. And over the years, I have built up a channel on YouTube with over 50 free guided sessions. So if people want to check that out, it's freely available. When you go onto YouTube, it's full-length sessions. So that was my objective, to hand it out to people that are in positions where they can't travel, they don't have the budget. And, you know, as it is right now, the whole world is basically in that type of a position where we cannot travel freely. And we all also have to watch our finances a little bit because we don't know what's coming down the pipeline. So I think the YouTube channel is more actual than ever, more relevant than ever right now. So I advise people to take a look, browse through it, see if it resonates with you. If it doesn't, then there's plenty of other people that are offering free guided sessions. So it's always a question of who do you resonate with? Does it fit in your schedule, in your life, and what you're moving through at this now moment?
Oh, absolutely. And I've tried different channels. I've gone to different people. Yours came across because I love Ho'oponopono. And when it came through, your voice is just so soothing, so relaxing. I really felt like it was calming my nervous system, boosting my immune system. And then you prompted and inspired me to say, well, why am I not doing this too? I could totally be recording sessions on my YouTube. And I actually created a new YouTube channel within the past few weeks so that I can have a space to really have my meditations and my hypnosis in there. So I thank you for that beautiful inspiration. And I absolutely love that one that I experienced it several weeks ago, and I've done it 1,000 times. There was actually one that you did this week that I absolutely loved. It was about the moon. So I've never actually done meditation specifically focusing on the moon. And I did notice a lot of shifts for myself this past weekend, a lot of emotional shifts. And I know a lot of people are feeling the same thing because I've seen it also with my clients where they're having all these symptoms in their body, or they're not feeling as energetic or happy or very emotional. So I had a lot of emotional shifts on the weekend, and my symptoms were in my body, like migraines and stomach ache. How have you used these kinds of sessions to help people deal with those kinds of shifts?
So there's a difference between the sessions that I offer on YouTube and then the sessions that I offer with private clients or during my retreats. Because when I do the retreats, it's like we focus on something very specific. For instance, my Shakti retreat is to help people reset, detox from the past and all the trauma that they've been carrying consciously and unconsciously deep into the cells of their body, to really assist on all levels of their being to release that, so that they, after just a short period of time, 5 days, really feel like, okay, I have some new options, I have new choices, because I'm no longer carrying that heavy burden from the past with me. So my YouTube channel is definitely a reflection of that, where I do want to help people to release certain things so that they have more clarity within their lives. But every little aspect that I offer has their own little unique segments in them and specific energies. But the general energy is supporting people to live their most authentic and most deepest desires without being hindered or blocked by stuff from the past.
Beautiful. Okay. I definitely felt the big shifts when I listened to that meditation earlier. Actually, I listened to it today. And I did notice the difference. And I saw that you had so many different options on your channel, that you really do have a huge variety. So I think that's great now, in light of this pandemic, that everybody's in their homes, that they're looking for things to help them relax and calm their nervous system and boost their immune system. It's so amazing that you have such a beautiful channel. Now, when we first met, which was about a couple weeks ago, I asked you what was it that triggered you to, you know, seek this passion and support other people? And was there some kind of a challenge in your health or life experience that triggered that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I come from a very challenging childhood where themes of abandonment and fear of commitment, fear of abandonment were very, very prevalent. Also, some type of sexual trauma as a child. So for me, I'm now 50 years old. I turned 50 last summer. And it took me up until I was well in my 40s to get a good grip on that and start dissecting it. It actually started when I was 31 years old after a very traumatic breakup, where I started discovering that, okay, I am the key, the only one that can change my whole history and how I am moving in the now moment and how my future is going to look like because of that. It's me. I have to take certain steps. So it was a realization of taking matters into my own hands, so to speak, and not stay in victim consciousness, because the way I grew up, it was easy for me to blame parents, grandparents, and sexual predators in my life. And when I started doing that deep, deep work of self-inquiry, and it was literally, it took me, you know, more than a decade to come to a certain point where I felt like, okay, I now fully understand who I am, what I need to be doing. And seeing the before and after, it really felt to me like I need to be sharing this on a deep level. This was not on a logical level, like, oh, I need to be sharing this. This was just like deep inside of me, like, I need to be sharing this with people. And that's why I often use the phrase at the end of a video, or even when I email with people, it says, remember, if I can do it, so can you. Because there's been a lot of adversity in my life, and I've been able to work through it. And I'm still, you know, it's on a daily basis. We get confronted with our deep rooted patterns and beliefs, and we're always getting the opportunity to look at, okay, is there still a little whiff of it, or is there like a big chunk of it? And just continuing to go on this journey. And for me, having the ability to share it with people and talk from a place of experience, that, hey, I empathize, I feel you, I see you, I hear you, but I also know that there's something beyond that, and holding that space for people. To me, that is the true meaning of holding space for somebody during a retreat or during a session or during an online course. It's like, I know how tough it is, but if you are diligent and you are determined, you can move beyond this. There's something better on the other side. You just have to move yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit. And that's why I think it's so freaking amazing that the whole world right now is in like a pressure cooker, almost being confronted with the choices that they made. Where am I living? Who am I living with? Who am I in lockdown with? What is the job that I'm doing? How well did I take care of my body? How good is my immune system? And how well am I going to be able to deal with all these messages of fear that are coming at me? So everybody is now in this position to really go internally and dissect, what have I done? What do I still need to be doing? What do I want? So I think it's an amazing opportunity for humanity right now. And the people that have already done some of their own personal work, they can be those space holders where they can say, I know it's tough. You know, 10 years ago or 20 years ago, I went through similar things that you went through. So I can hold this space of empathy, and at the same time, not go into pity and not say, oh, it's so tough. No, it's like, come on, we can do this together. If we join forces, we can do it.
Oh, absolutely. And it's getting out of our stories, because we kind of get stuck in that story. This happened to me, and that's why it keeps happening to me, and I'm stuck in my patterns. So it's amazing to have these tools that we can actually use to help guide people out of that and really transform the way they feel and understand where are these feelings and emotions coming from. because they're not things that are actually involved right now. They're in the past. They're so old that we don't even realize that it's impacting us. But even like you said, a breakup with someone or a fight with a friend can trigger all these intense emotions and throw us into a spiral. And it's from something that happened in our childhood or our past that we hadn't processed. So it's beautiful that you've created, you know, such a community to help support people through that. And realizing that a lot of people are experiencing those intense emotions right now because we're trapped in this quarantine and we're stuck in uncomfortable situations.
Yes, yeah, and I do feel it's important to revisit the stories so that we can see where it originated, and then heal that aspect. And then you can see like, oh my God, I have been that story from when I was a baby or when I was a young child or a teenager or whatever. I'm still, you know, it's recycling in my life over and over again. It's different people, it's different, looks like different circumstances, but the energy of the story is just like recycling until we grab it, until we recognize it and are like, okay, do I still want to keep playing that part? Do I still want to replay that story over and over again? And that's where the real healing comes in. But that also means that self-forgiveness. So that's where I come, you know, weave in the whole Ho'oponopono, because forgiving ourselves is often the biggest stumbling block, the biggest hurdle that we have to cross when we come to these realizations of, oh, wow, have I been doing that? Have I been allowing that? Either you had no boundaries, or having no boundaries felt really familiar to you, and then all of a sudden you get some epiphanies and the shame and the guilt comes in. So that's one of the main blocks, I feel, energy that got frozen in time, is the self-forgiveness. So when we want to move on, we really have to radically forgive ourselves. Radically. There's no other way.
Absolutely. And it's a continuous process because we're going to keep seeing challenges all the time. And it's a process of forgiveness, which is why I love using Ho'oponopono too in the meditations. Now, you do different kinds of therapy. I was looking at your website. You do soul rebirthing, sexual de-armoring, ancestral healing. What's the difference between all those?
So in a nutshell, the soul rebirthing is where I take people all the way back to a time before conception. So you're tapping into your divine soul contract, like what was the reason why you as a soul wanted to incarnate, and what were the lessons that you needed to learn. And then we go all the way back through this moment of conception, your time in the womb space, early childhood, and we basically rewrite the story, which is also a story of forgiveness. Because when we hold on to all the things that went wrong and that were not completely in alignment with our soul's desire, which it actually is, because on a soul level, we choose certain lessons and certain parents and certain circumstances to learn things. But on a human level, it feels very out of alignment with our true heart's desire. So coming to terms with that and rewriting that story, just empowering yourself by saying, okay, this has been my story up until now. What is my new story going to be? So the soul rebirthing is, I feel, like a foundational session. When people come to me with childhood trauma, sexual trauma, this is one of the first signature sessions that we start with, is the soul rebirthing, because that is the basis, that's the foundation. And then we move into the ancestral piece, which is also linked to what was passed on from generation to generation in your family. But we go way, way further back than just 7 generations. And we also tap into the generations in the future. So the ancestral piece is very important, because a lot of people I work with, they feel a responsibility to heal their families. And part of the ancestral healing is letting go of that responsibility, that burden of the responsibility. And we move into being a facilitator for all the ancestral energies to come in and to join you in a healing movement for your family and for your lineage that goes all the way back to source of creation. But it's coming at it from a different perspective. It's no longer feeling that burden of, I need to heal my mother, my father, my whole lineage, because on a soul level, a lot of us came in to shift that. And then the sexual de-armoring is, it's actually unlocking our creativity. So the sexual energy is also linked to our creativity, our source of creation within, where we can, on an orgasmic level, create so many things. But it's not just sex or intercourse. It's sexual de-armoring is so much more than just that. But a lot of women have, through even in their ancestral lineage or the culture that they were born in, or the family beliefs or religious beliefs, there's so many contraction and frozen energy on a deep cell level in our sexual reproductive system, that the sexual de-armoring is designed to release that, to open that up. But like I said, it's not just about sex. It's our creativity. It's our self-expression. Because I feel that when we tune into the yoni, the vagina, when you look at a picture of vocal cords, it looks just like a yoni. It looks just like a vagina. So the two are also connected when it comes to self-expression. So over the time of history, a lot of women were asked to not speak up. Literally, your opinion is of no value. And of course, there's been a lot of movement, and a lot of women have come to a position where they can speak freely. But we're still a minority in the world. There's still a lot of people in different countries and on different continents that might not have those privileges. So when we do the work for ourselves, we're also doing it for the collective. And not just women, but also the feminine energy in the men. Because when we talk about divine feminine, that is also present in the men. And sometimes we as women are too far into our masculine energy. So it's always about bringing that balance between masculine and feminine energy in both genders. So it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman.
Oh, absolutely. That totally makes sense, how we need to balance the two energies. And I love how you connect the yoni and the throat, because there's a huge connection. A lot of the patients that I've seen, and even in my own experience, my symptoms all started with the throat and neck pains and thyroid issues and all of these things. And progressively later on in life, I had issues with the pelvis, eventually had a hysterectomy, and all of these things went together. But I didn't realize the impact of the emotions, and how when we hold our feelings and emotions in, which I had been doing my entire life, how it creates such havoc inside our bodies, and we get all this stress response happening. We don't really, in the science world, we don't realize that connection. Because I came from a nursing environment that is just purely, disease. This is the symptoms you get. These are the medications you give. And then now I'm in this other world where it's completely different. And I've realized how processing emotions and releasing the emotions actually releases the trauma that's in these tissues, and progressively actually helps the person heal.
Yes.
It's beautiful how you brought that all together. Now, how exactly is it that you use that sexual healing? Is it all just like an auditory guide that you're guiding them through that?
It's a full body experience without me laying one finger on a person. You're not touching yourself. I'm not touching you, but you're actually going energetically, you're moving through your own body and the body parts. It's a full body experience without any touching. Because what I've noticed is that when people come to me with severe trauma and sexual trauma, it is a lower threshold to offer the healing in this way, because it's very tough for people that had sexual trauma to open up to a facilitator. And if there's physical touch involved, it could place a trauma upon a trauma. And I know there are a lot of really good facilitators out there and therapists that have the most pure intentions. But it's when you're already coming from sexual trauma, sometimes your judgment can be a little bit off, and maybe you might end up with somebody whose intentions are not that pure. So to eliminate all of that, I feel it is important to have a technique, a tool, a modality that takes away that pressure so that people can feel safe. If then after that they feel that they need more body work, they can take it from there. But it's just as effective as touching somebody, in my opinion. Because when I started doing this work, I was like, okay, do I need to become a body worker? And I was constantly getting, no, you have to work with groups. You have to do it in a group. If you're doing body work, you can only work with one-on-one, which is valuable work, absolutely. But it was just not in the stars for me.
It makes sense. And really you want to create a good, valuable experience for more people and really make a difference in the world. So it's amazing that you're able to do this in the group environments, which is ultimately my goal too, is be more virtual, more online, and supporting people in learning their bodies and how can we process emotions, and understanding that our diseases and our illnesses and our genetics doesn't have to be our fate for our life, that we can transform things at this moment and continue to live a certain way and create a loving practice for yourself where you don't have to live that same life. Like, I don't know if you know a little bit about me, but I actually suffered for chronic pain more than 20 years. The right side of my body was numb. I had lost a lot of my hair by the time I was 20. So all of these things were piling up on top of each other. And I know that earlier you talked about how we choose to help our ancestors and heal them. I was one of those kids. I was an empathic kid that I chose that my mom and her chronic pain and my grandma and her chronic pain was my job to heal. And I continued to absorb people's pain and trauma throughout my life, and then developed all this chronic illness. And it was a hard process for me to get out of that. But I realized how valuable that experience is, because now I can help support people do the same thing.
Yes. Yeah. Because now you're talking from a place of experience. You're teaching from the scar, not the wound. And that is what we need to be doing. We all are very important puzzle pieces. Each and every one of us, everybody that's listening, you have some type of unique medicine that is going to help somebody else. And that's why I love the groups. And I hope that everything kind of settles down and we're allowed to travel again and gather in groups, because there's so much benefit of gathering in a group and doing the work together, because everybody has a little key that unlocks something in somebody, and that's what makes group events so powerful.
Oh, absolutely. You go to a retreat and you connect with someone in an activity and they get something out of you, and you give them something that you had no idea even you had. So it's a beautiful, beautiful gift. Explain a little bit to me, because I know we both had something similar too. So I had gallbladder issues and I ended up taking out my gallbladder and all this chronic digestive stuff. I know you had a similar experience. How was that for you?
Yeah, so this was something that was in my ancestral lineage, because I had women in my family that had their gallbladders removed. And ever since I was a little child, I had gallbladder issues where I was throwing up bile, which was like, as a kid, up until today, I don't like any bitter foods because it reminds me of those horrible experiences as a child. Now, back then, I was totally unaware what this meant. Now, at the end of my second marriage, which was a marriage where I slowly but surely was like losing myself and not holding on to my own values, and just like continually like eating away at who I really was, with all the frustration and the anger inside of me building up. And I ended up in the hospital with a gallbladder stone that was so painful that, I mean, I had 2 children prior to that. And it was like, this is the most horrible pain that I've ever experienced. I was crawling on the hospital floor, screaming at my partner at the time, like, you're killing me, and what are you doing to me? So there was like all of this anger and frustration was coming up. And after that experience, I really, you know, that was a wake-up call for me. Like, okay, I am killing myself by not being who I really want to be and speaking my truth and just staying in a relationship that's really not working for me. And then when that relationship, during that relationship, because it still went on for a little longer, I started doing physical cleanses, because once it shows up in the physical body, you do have to support your physical body.
Mm-hmm.
So I found a liver and gallbladder flush that worked for me. And I always say to people, educate yourself, go online, search for something that resonates with you. Don't just believe somebody else. Read the books, read the testimonies of people. But for me, it really worked on a physical level to start clearing that out. But next level was, oh my God, I have to change my beliefs. I have to change, you know, everything I've done so far. So that's when I went into my dark night of the soul, you know, what people call the dark night of the soul, where I was just rock bottom. And at the end of that relationship, thinking, do I still want to go on with my life? Because who am I? What do I want? Everything I thought I wanted, I had, and it really wasn't working for me. But rock bottom is actually a good place to be, because then you have nothing to lose. You can just totally recreate yourself. And that was me, you know, crawling out of that dark pit step by step, throwing out anchors into the future, going to more trainings, more workshops, and just continuing to do my work. And for me, so that gallbladder crisis was actually a gift. It was definitely a gift. But I feel like we do not need to push our bodies that far. Just being more in touch with who we are as an authentic, on an authentic core level. What do we want? Are the things that I'm doing in my life in alignment with that, yes or no? And having that honest conversation with yourself, doing self-inquiry, looking at what am I creating? Is this really what I want? And what steps do I need to take? Taking full accountability, full responsibility. What steps do I need to take to shift my life, to change my life?
Absolutely. That is so beautiful. And I'm glad that you had that experience where you actually were able to figure things out early on, because mine was very different. I went through this whole medicals where I started removing organs and dealing with all the symptoms and more prescriptions until I finally hit rock bottom, and then changed my lifestyle, beginning with the foundation that I had to feed my body properly, eat well, and support it with supplementation and cleansing, realizing that the emotional support was such a huge component, and I didn't find that until almost 2 years ago. So it's beautiful you found it so early on and you didn't have to have that removal, and that you had such a beautiful journey. We're gonna go on a quick break and we'll come right back. Stay tuned. Aloha, this is Diane. Aloha and welcome back. This is Diane Vick and I'm interviewing Sandra. And before the break, we were talking about gallbladder and how the gallbladder and stomach pains hold emotions. It's something that I didn't realize recently until about a few years ago, when I finally decided I was going to publish the book, how powerful our emotions, our relationships, the situations that we're experiencing right now can impact our body and give us these intense symptoms. And the gallbladder was such a horrible pain. And I remember even getting phantom pains after I removed it. And I didn't realize the anger and the emotional symptoms until recently, when I had another pain that just flared, and I don't even have a gallbladder. And that's when I went to all the doctors and get all the tests, and everything was perfect, but it was emotional. And once I released those emotions, and I realized those pains were finally gone, and the connection that I made was so powerful. So it's so amazing that people can actually go within and figure out what's causing these symptoms. What are the emotions that are being triggered? What happened in my childhood that I'm connecting with, and truly process those things, as well as support the body. So many of the clients that come to me tend to have a lot of self-limiting beliefs connected to some kind of childhood trauma. What would you say is the most common client you get with a trauma and this experience?
Well, everybody is unique in their own way, but what they all have in common is that we can trace it back to a certain event, to uh, a situation in the family. So let's just imagine a baby inside of the womb space. And I'm sure that many of your viewers have heard of Dr. Emoto's work with water, where he did all these tests on how the water can get encoded and infused. And if you send positive energy to water and then they freeze the water and they look at the crystals, or if there's like aggression or negative comments being infused into the water and they freeze it. And the difference between these two water crystals is just mind-blowing. So we as people are, highly percentage is water. But let's imagine that baby inside of the mother's womb in the amniotic fluid. And all that is happening around you, what your mother's emotions, what is going on between mother and father, what might be going on in the family with grandparents, maybe siblings, just in the collective, what is the energy of that time? What was going on? Maybe, it was just a very challenging time for everybody. And if you start just looking at that, only that, how we get encoded, how our molecules in our body get infused with all of that information. And that's part of the soul rebirthing, where we go and we reverse that. We start protecting that child inside of the womb from all of that energy that's coming from outside. So that's one aspect of it. But even just that, even if you do not remember any trauma or any challenging event in your life, it could be just that, maybe. So I encourage people to have a conversation with their mother if they're able to do that, just to ask questions. What was going on in your life when you became pregnant with me? Were there any challenges? How was it in the hospital? How was my birthing experience? Because a lot of the times we're also recreating certain traumatic events that happened in the delivery room. Let's say you had the umbilical cord around your neck, or it was an emergency procedure because they thought you were going to die, or they took you immediately away from the mother. And when we start dissecting it and investigating it, a lot of the times people have aha moments, like, oh wow, yeah, I've been actually recreating that in my life, until you catch it, and then you can change it.
That makes sense.
And what you were saying about all the organs, from a Western point of view, everything is compartmentalized. Oh, you have a stomach issue, let's look at that. In more alternative medicines, they will look at the whole body. It's a holistic approach, and they even have linked certain emotions to certain organs. Like we were talking about, the gallbladder is frustration, which is linked to the liver, which is anger. So if you're not able to express your anger, it's going to turn into frustration. If you're worrying, then you will have a lot of stomach issues. If you're fearful, you will probably have some issues with the kidneys, and so on, so on, so on. Every organ can be linked to a primary emotion. And so in that, if we look at it that way, our bodies are beautiful messengers. Our bodies are actually communicating with us and saying, let's look at this. But if you just medicate to work with the symptoms and you're not really working with what is the root cause of it, yeah, at a certain point, you will have to have some organs removed, or you'll get really sick. So I believe that once it shows up in the body, it already went through a lot of different layers where we were not able to identify it or process it, and then it starts crystallizing in the body. It starts to physicalize in the body. But it's still, you can still reverse it to a great extent.
Oh, absolutely. For sure. It took me a long time to figure it out. And then finally I published the book, The Truth About IBS and Anxiety, which really is overcoming chronic illness and chronic disability and realizing that there was the physical root, the inflammation that is happening in the physical body, the organs, the tissues and everything, and the emotional component, and bringing them together to find a loving and supportive way to help the body release them. But it was a beautiful journey that I had to figure out the hard way.
When did you write the book?
It was published back in December, and then it came out on paperback in March.
Oh, wow. Congratulations. Yeah, this is something the world really needs. People's own stories where you can talk from a place of experience and then writing a book about it is, wow. Thanks for doing that.
Thank you. Thank you. My passion is to actually create a different book now after this whole COVID-19 pandemic and really bring things together, because as we evolve, we incorporate new things that we learn, we take more classes, we learn new practices, and there's so many other things that people might resonate with, because maybe there's one of the therapies that I do that they like, but maybe there's something else that someone else taught me that would be valuable for that person.
Yeah, and I think it's so important what you're talking about, because what I feel on a global level, collective level, we've been given away our power. So even when we talk about, oh, vaccine, there's going to be a vaccine, or oh, there's going to be a cure, again, we're giving away our power outside of ourselves. What can we do right now in this now moment is strengthen our immune system so that we are more resilient. And that is something that everybody can start doing instead of waiting for a vaccine and eating junk food and drinking diet soda for breakfast. It's like, okay, what can I do to make my body stronger, my immune system more resilient, that when, you know, viruses will come and go. When it comes, how prepared am I? Or am I going to give my power away and ask for somebody else to then heal me while we have all the tools available?
Within us, yeah, for
Yes.
sure. So like I created a course for the summer, which my goal is to release this course, which is called Manifest Wellness. It's how do we go through different body systems, different kinds of symptoms that we're having, and begin to learn what our body is trying to tell us, combining the science realm and the alternative realm, and using hypnosis to really tap into that subconscious mind and help your body feel the things that you want to be feeling. Because we can change that from within.
Yeah, and luckily science is catching. I mean, there's a lot of scientists out there now that are taking all the work that you and I are doing out of the woo-woo zone, because there's actual scientific proof now of all of these methods and techniques are actually having an effect, a positive effect on the body and on health. So this is an exciting time to share all of this.
Absolutely. And there's so many things changing and so many more research studies out there now, and really opening up the world. But I think there's still some people that are stuck in that science world where they think the only way out is prescriptions and covering up with medications, which only causes more problems.
Yeah.
So that's why I wanted to create this course. So it would create a kind of a balance. Okay, so this is a nurse that's teaching this course because she's coming from the science world, but she's also bringing what she learned from the emotional world and the healing world together to help create that awareness for people that don't really understand what's happening in their body.
Yes. And also being okay with whatever people are choosing, because I know that I see that a lot of my clients, they care deeply about people in their family and their health, and they might still be buying into the old narrative and not moving into this new paradigm where there's a lot of more options. And it's like, again, letting go of that responsibility to heal your family, but just being the living example of it and honoring their free will, just allowing them to whatever path they have chosen. We don't know on a soul level what their intentions were, and who are we to say that somebody else is doing it in a way that we don't agree with. We can only do what we feel is right in our hearts without judging other people, honoring their free will, and then surrender into it. And if you do that, because when people feel that you're pushing something onto them, a natural reaction is to go in a defense mode. No, my this and this is working, and I don't want to change. I've seen that happen with a lot of my clients in their family circles where they back off and really from a place of non-judgment, non-infringement, and then shifts can happen. And if they don't, it's fine too. And that's where looking at, am I still judging somebody for choosing a different path than me? Because that judgment is, that's part of the Ho'oponopono as well. It's like, okay, Ho'oponopono can also be used to clear a field between two people. Maybe you feel judgment from somebody. Maybe you are on some level judging somebody else. You can use Ho'oponopono without infringing upon anybody else, but just to clear the field where you're like, I'm setting my intention to just be a source of unconditional love and allowing everybody to make the choices they want to make, myself included, and just drop it.
Oh, absolutely. Let go, let them live. Create your boundaries, obviously, for sure, because if the person is causing you to have these anxieties and these fears because of things that they're telling you, you do need to speak up for yourself and set your boundaries. But give them their space and let them figure it out on their own and share what they're willing to accept for you to share, and keep that space for yourself.
Yeah. And then we move into the natural law of attraction and repulsion. And it's like, you just be whoever you are from a place of unconditional love, and people that resonate with that will come into your life. Maybe some people will move out of your reality. Other people will come in. But all you can do is be the guardian of your own vibration, your own frequency, and check in, constant self-inquiry. How am I doing? How am I doing?
Absolutely. Our friend circles change, our family that comes around will change, and it's just going with the flow as we evolve and learn.
Yeah, yeah. And letting go is the hardest. I mean, it's very hard for a lot of people, myself included. Letting go was one of the biggest lessons. And getting more comfortable with it, allowing things to come, allowing things to go. And we're so programmed to fight for things. You need to fight for it. And it's like, no, if you need to work hard at something, it's probably not working. But it's your determination, it's your intention. But that's a whole other podcast.
There's so many different things we could talk about. It's an interesting journey in the podcast world. Let's talk a little bit more about sexual healing, because I've realized that as well, that sexual healing, yoni inflammation really impacts our creativity and our female empowerment. So if we want to be productive and get tasks done and feel energized and feel connected through all our chakras, it's important for us to deal with that inflammation and that trauma that's connected between our yoni and our throat. During this particular stressful crisis, I know there's so many people that are being impacted because now they're in their homes. They may be having situations with their relationships or the person that they're in quarantine with that is creating this trauma, this inflammation within their bodies and disconnecting them from themselves. Could you give any tips to help people relax a little bit?
So one of my questions that I like to use, and it's just to provoke a little bit of like energy so that you start looking at things. And my question would be, why are you not having sex every day? And it's like, what? But the reason why I asked the question is, what is not working that is actually blocking your freedom of speech, your desire to be open and sexual, your desire or your opportunity to be creative? Because it's linked. Now, of course, there's like, let's say, two major categories: people that are in a relationship and people that are not in a relationship. So let's just say you are in a relationship, asking yourself the question, why am I not having sex every day? And even if you are having sex every day, you can ask the question, why am I having sex every day? Because sometimes sex is tied to survival, safety, where it feels like if I don't have sex with my partner, then, and this is sometimes on an unconscious level, if I don't have sex with my partner, he won't do anything for me, or he won't be nice to me. And if you're not having sex, okay, what am I missing? What is not being fulfilled within me so that I can feel safe and supported? So there's two different angles of looking at it. And it's just a question that I just want it to be a little bit thought provoking. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. And I was actually watching another podcast that you talked about that same question this morning. I didn't get to finish it, but I am dying to see where it went. But it's absolutely true that it's such a powerful question, and it seems to be a topic that a lot of people don't want to talk about. So I actually wrote a different book that I don't even say that I wrote, because it is erotic, and it is to bring out that conversation and talk and empower women to have that conversation and regain control of their bodies and realize how beautiful the gift is to process our emotions and heal ourselves from within. But it is a topic that's hard for people to get through. And I know that they're feeling it right now as they're in this quarantine and dealing with this extra stress. But it is such a beautiful gift when you're able to really release those negative emotions and feel good about yourself, and then get connected with someone else at a conscious level and see the creativity that comes out of that. It's completely different.
And becoming super conscious of the reasons why you're having sex or not having sex. Just becoming, I think this is a good time to actually do it, because we're in close proximities. If you're in a partnership, you're in close proximity with the partner, so you can have deeper conversations as well. And it's, again, finding the courage within to have conversations that might be very challenging or that you feel are taboo to talk about. Like, if I talk about that, that might be the end of the relationship. But your relationship with yourself is the most important relationship you have. So if you're doing things that are against what feels good to you, that's the thing you have to look at. Like, is this in alignment with who I am? And then having the courage first to do the self-inquiry, to get clarity within yourself. What is it that I want? What does sexuality mean to me? How do I want it to show up in my life? How do I want to experience it? And then having that courageous conversation with the partner.
Yeah, but it definitely starts within. You got to do some reflection, ask yourself questions, journal, and write these things down, so then you can have that conversation, because it can be an uncomfortable conversation for people to have.
Yes. And there's been a lot of, I've heard it from several women where they're like, I don't feel like having sex right now during this whole COVID thing. But it's also because for many people, the very basics, the very foundation of safety and security are on the line. How am I going to pay my bills? Will I have a job? How will I make money? Where will I live? And that is, as women in general, as women, we cannot really open up sexually if we do not feel safe and secure and provided for by ourselves or by a partner or in the relationship. I don't want to put all the pressure on if you're in a partnership, because it's always a two-way street. But just becoming aware that that is very, very linked to safety and security. So if we go into having sex because we want safety and security, it's also out of balance. If we don't have sex because we don't feel safe and secure, it's out of balance. So we need to find that sweet spot in the middle where we can have those conversations and the realizations within, more importantly than the conversation. So first, the realizations within. How is my relationship with sexuality?
Absolutely. The first person we need to be safe and secure with is ourselves, in order to bring that into the relationship. So it's such an important process to really understand yourself, and what are these experiences? What am I feeling right now? Is it physical symptoms where I'm fatigued, anxious, and pain, and that's why I'm not having sex? And then think about it and reflect, well, what are these sensations that my body's telling me? What's the message? And what do I need to work on?
Yeah. And on top of that, if you had any type of sexual trauma, especially when you were a child or even later in life, you need to address that as well, because that is, again, the root cause of a lot of stuff. And that is parallel to what we were just talking about having these questions, why am I having sex? If there's any type of sexual trauma, that needs to be addressed separately. because you need to reset that template. And then from that, like, okay, I've dealt with it. I've gotten that frozen energy out of my body. Now, what do I want? That's when you start asking yourself the questions.
Absolutely, yeah. If you have some kind of a trauma, maybe you don't even know you had a trauma, but you know, getting a supportive therapist that can work through that and figure out if there was a trauma that's underlying and causing these issues right now is so important.
Yeah.
We have about 5 minutes left. Mm-hmm. So on your website, you were talking a lot about, and we talked about it earlier, balancing the masculine and feminine. How exactly do you incorporate that? Because I know you work mostly with women, but when you do work with men, how do they feel about that whole concept?
So I think the men that are attracted to working with me are already open to that. And I've had retreats where there were men and women. And I always had a bit of a skewed look on things where I was like, oh, men, they don't have that many traumas and they work faster through it than the women. But while I had the men with me during the retreat, the opposite was the case. And I feel that is because as women, and I'm generally speaking, so I'm not talking for the whole population, but just in general, women are used to expressing their emotions. They're allowed to cry. They even us having our moon cycle, monthly releasing the blood that's been pent up inside of our physical bodies. So we have a history of being allowed, getting permission to at least release and show our emotions. Where in generally speaking, the men are more programmed to not do that, to hold it in, to be strong, to be a man, don't be, and they use all these words, don't be a pussy, don't be a sissy, don't be whatever. So on top of that, so looking at all of that, I've noticed that sometimes it is harder for men to get in touch with that. And they also have it innately in them that they want to protect and they want to be the provider and the protector. So to let go of that shield and that like persona and go into deep healing, I think it's a bigger step to take than for women to take the step to do the healing. So I encourage all women to really hold space for the men, that if they are ready to do that work, that we honor that and that we support that.
Absolutely. And I found that's true too, that it's mostly women that come into the circle to work with me and less men. It's harder for them to seek out and accept that they might need some support from someone else to talk about their feelings and their emotions. And
maybe because the scientists, and it's mainly male scientists that are coming up with all of these new discoveries, I think that is opening up the door for more men step in.
Oh, it's definitely. I think this crisis is really opening up things for people because they're becoming much more aware of what makes them uncomfortable. Where do I need to start supporting myself? What things can I do? So hopefully there's going to be a shift there now, and men are going to seek the help that they need and get the support from the community, whether it's a woman or a man, whoever it is.
Yeah.
Well, we're wrapping up soon, so let them know, how can they reach you if there's anything exciting that you're sharing on your website?
So I'm starting at 10 online workshops, and the first one is on May 23. And people can sign up for all 10 workshops, or you can choose a single workshop, something that resonates deeply with you and that you want to do. So that's available on my website. I still plan to do my retreat in September, from 11 to 15 September in Sedona, but it all depends on travel restrictions and gathering restrictions. And my YouTube channel, I definitely encourage people to look at all the free stuff that I'm offering. That was the intention, to just share it freely with everybody. So please go ahead and browse through that and see if anything resonates with you. And otherwise, just go on my website, sandrarolus.com, and there you can find all the other offerings that I have available.
Well, thank you. It was a great podcast, and definitely I do suggest you go to her website or go to her YouTube channel. Her meditations are beautiful. I listen to them all the time. It's spelled Sandra, Sandra, ROLUS.com. I spelled that a little messed up. Thank you for listening to this podcast. And thank you, Sandra, for being my guest. Have a beautiful day. Aloha. This is Diane. See you for the next one.